what will be the main energy source on your electricity bill in 2020?
Depends.
Thank you.
It depends on what happens with issues around stable carbon price signals, around the state of the grid in terms of being able to handle renewables, in terms of market pull for various companies. But I would think by 2020, where we will certainly see a larger penetration of renewables, the natural fluxes, as I talk about, wind, water, sun, that there will still be coal going on, no matter what we do today, unless we dramatically realign the policy signals to allow coal to segue into cleaner resources.
If we want to make sure that we can generate all the energy that humanity needs from a renewable source, what we would need is a tiny piece of land, which is about 350 square miles. It should be, that piece of land should be in a place where there's a lot of sun, say Texas, and it would be perhaps half of Texas or something like that. And if we would capture just regularly 20% of whatever sun shines there and turn that into solar energy, then we can give any person on the planet the electricity he or she needs, and we can run all the things that we need.
My view is that the distributed energy is going to be much more a part of where we get energy. And so like the internet, going from mainframes to a completely distributed view, I see us being much more in the distributed energy paradigm where the solar, the wind, the geothermal, the different kinds of ways to generate energy are done at the sources. And so the companies that are doing that can be, are not going to necessarily have geographic ties.
Shell's also famous for its scenario planning. I remember reading 20, maybe even 30 years ago already, scenarios of Shell that showed where we were going in terms of renewable energy when very few people were even talking about it.
We've recently been able to secure some support from the Department of Energy in Louisiana and then here in California, because we believe it's critical to help us in shifting from the energy we have today to the energy of the future, which we are absolutely committed to a greener energy future.
What is the role of government in a broader perspective?
You can rewind the policy signals where you incentivize utilities to implement efficiency programs and still allow them to make money.
In general, the countries like Sweden and Brazil, the ones that have really embraced the clean energy move, have become more prosperous, not less prosperous. This hasn't been a drag on the economy.
7 years ago, Germany changed the legislation so that any German citizen or company or farm could invest in solar voltaic cells and get a 20-year contract back to the utility companies at a fixed rate, at a good rate. And so Germans, by now the hundreds of thousands, are investing in solar voltaic cells.
More than half of the panels in the world are in Germany.
And Germany now produces more solar energy through photovoltaics than the rest of the world combined.
Obviously, we need to change it, but we're also very dependent. I mean, and it's hard. I mean, how do you see that, Mary?
It's agreeing that to get to a greener future around energy, that we need to take steps. We also need to be challenged to say, how quickly can we move on the technology front? How quickly can we get our efficiencies down? How quickly can we change behaviors of individuals? We've seen with hurricanes that, the country shuts down. I mean, I think it's about 80% of the energy for the U.S. comes from the Gulf Coast.
We all drove in our cars with fossil fuel, but we also need to get to a green technology future. The question is how and when.
We look at this as 3 time horizons. There's the near-term opportunities around efficiency that are happening today. Yeah. And I would have chose China, not Brazil, in terms of the model for the world, because they have done a marvelous job of implementing efficiencies and in renewables. The middle horizon is in the next 10 years, where we think about technologies that can be deployed at less than $20 per ton carbon cost, And then the long-term horizon is from the 20 to 2050, right, when we're talking about carbon capture and sequestration. So
This one may be the controversial one, but I'll go there, is around having an effective and fair approach in terms of how we go about lowering CO2 emissions, because the way we look at it is the debate's over. That's an area that needs to be reduced, and we believe by having a cap on it, that's going to help us continue to ratchet it down.
We have to understand as a country and as a race, as a civilization, that we have a diminishing time frame to make the kind of decisions around this transition that we need to make for the future of our civilization and our legacies.
Have you thought about the role that credit policy and banking and consumer credit and industrial credit play in getting this solution implemented today?
It would be my preference to figure out how to make it easier for companies to extrapolate profits and make it more attractive then for the banks to lend to them instead of trying to do it with the banks.
The reality is that there's a concerted attempt on the part of the petroleum and coal industries to block any meaningful movement in our lifetime, basically, so that there can be a continued maximization of profit because of a domination of the energy market.
I would like to go back to something that Jim mentioned, and want to go on the record saying that Shell is supportive and very active in the climate change bill.
What is really, motivating people is something inspiring, and fear is not inspiring. So the idea of putting a man on the moon within a decade is inspiring. The idea of every man is equal and abolishing slavery, that is inspiring. But what can we do in this debate to make it inspiring?
What inspires me is the fact that that human beings have resilience and adaptivity. The technologies exist that can lead us into the green future.
That's why Shell engages in dialogue such as this, because we want to understand.
What kind of energy will the vehicle use that takes you to your work in 2020?
I hope and look forward to it being a natural gas powered vehicle, because I believe that's a bridge to the greener energy. If not, I guess it's a Prius type advancement, because I've enjoyed riding one of those when I rent.
Well, Carnegie Mellon recently did a study comparing LNG to coal and the life cycle emissions of both, and found that LNG maybe comes out a little bit better, but is generally pretty comparable to coal, but certainly LNG is not anywhere near that.
It's still not a renewable.
I believe that natural gas is a bridging fuel.
If you were, for just briefly, the one person on the planet who can make the decision that everyone will listen to, what then would you choose?
I would advocate a stable price on carbon. The price would increase over time, and it would have many effects. It would provide regulatory uncertainty. It would bring stranded sectors into the marketplace. Farmers could be paid to store carbon in soils. There are many multiple benefits around a stable price on carbon, and it would be a carbon tax. It wouldn't be a cap and trade.
The petroleum industry would be able to have some economic policies and incentives in place where they'd be, instead of lobbying for the things they're lobbying for now, they'd be able to lobby for new energy that they would be responsible for, because they've got the infrastructure to do this. They should be the leader.
If President Obama and the leaders of the world meeting in Copenhagen would say that moving forward over the next 10 years, between 2010 and 2020, we were going to make a global commitment to reduce our carbon emissions by 80% by 2020, which is what thousands of scientists around the world say that we must do to preserve civilization as we know it.
One of the things I say back at work is, I'm going to put people in a room, no food, no water, till you've solved the problem. And part of the problem is us, so we need to do that. And so I think that's important, because if we don't have that as a vision, so it says that without a vision, people will perish. that's exactly what will happen. And if we don't have a vision that we play a role in it, that will happen. And equally, Schwarzkopf said, hope is not a method. And I think we've been hoping for too long, and we need to take action.
Thank you so much. Thank all of you for being here.